Okay, so let's continue from where we left. We were talking about creating our own functions, right? How do you create our own functions? So what we said, function is just a name that we give to block of code, right? And we saw functions with return type, without return type. We saw function with input parameter and without input parameters. So I'll show you one example here. Okay, so let's say I define a function called myfunc. Okay, and it doesn't take any parameter. Okay, and here I'm going to print value of x, let's say. Now, when I say value of x equal to x, obviously I have not defined any value for x, correct? So now when I call this function, my func1, now this will not throw error until I call it, right? Let's see. Okay, no error because we have not called it. Now when we actually call it, that's when you will see error. X is not defined. Now if I put x equal to 5, now what happens? Now you see x equal to 5 is defined before I call value of x here. Okay, so here you get value of x equal to 5, right? But if I put it after this, again, you have a problem because we are printing this, right? We're calling this before we assign the value. So here it's not able to find the value of x. We are giving value of x only after calling the function. Great. Okay, so we should put it here. This is how you can pass what is called as global values. Global values are generally values which you don't generally tend to change. Okay, so let's say if Python did not provide value for pi, for example, let's say, or you have your own set of constant values which you don't plan to change. So okay, you define it in the starting. Okay, just a second. Okay, so you see here x equal to 5. Okay, and I said generally we have to deal with global values. Okay, we do that. So let's say I create my own constant. Okay, so what generally the practice is that such constant values you declare as a capital letter. Okay, you can declare using small letter as well, not a problem. But generally what we do, we use capital letters. So I can say, um, house number or something. Now your house number will not change, correct? So you can say house number equal to 55. Now, this is a way to say that to the programmer, okay, or to your fellow programmers who is going to see your file, that this is a constant, okay, and this will not change, okay. So, you can print it anywhere, even function, you can print it. You don't have to pass to this function, okay. You can print here my house number, right? And then you put house number. So generally, this is done in case where the value would not change, right? When you deal with constants. Great. Now here I have x equal to 5, okay? And here I can print x, okay? Now let's say, okay, you have your own local x value, or you are changing house number locally, or maybe we'll make it something different. So now in this case, okay, since x5 is all x equal to 5 is already given, but what happens here, okay, it has its own local version, okay, and here if I try to print value of x, what will be printed? Guess? 5 or 51?
5, huh?
Yes, it will be 5. Okay, so see x equal to 5, and then it goes here, it becomes 51, but x becomes 51 within this function, not outside. So the scope, we say scope of this variable or the life, okay? So life of this is created here and it will die here, okay? It will not be accessible outside the function. There's a scope is defined within this function, Okay, even though, x equal to 5 is getting changed to 51, but this is a different x. Name may be same, but this is a different x now. It's a local copy, and the scope of this will be within this function. It is not available outside. Now see, when we put x equal to 5, it was available here. Okay, when you say x equal to 5, it was available here because it's at a global level. But if I comment this, and if I say 51, okay, so this is defined within this, right? So here this is not, so reverse is not available, not applicable. So what you define as global will be available to the local, but what you define local is not available to global. So it's like this. This is like your community things, right? You have community pool, community uh, recreation center, whatever. So that community recreation center is available to everyone. And this is like your own stuff, right? Your own pool is not available for others. You can only use it for yourself, isn't it? So this is like a local variable. This is the local to this function. And the life of this ends when you end the function. This is global because this is written outside. Okay, so this is available to everyone. Okay, this is like, we call it as main program, right? We are starting from very first character. Even if I give a space here, we saw that it's going to throw error. So this is available to everyone, but this is available only to this, right? Now, since if you do not have X here, let's take you do not have your pool, then you can go and use community pool. But if you have your own pool, then why will you go to community pool? You will not go, right? Not only that. Now, let's say I define it later. Let's say I define this later. I'm going to close this. Now, here again, okay, you see, it says X is referenced before assignment. You're assigning value to X here, but it says you're assigning it before, you're using it before assignment. It's like this. So you're saying that, okay, we are going to have our own, we are going to have, right, our own pool. Then when you say, okay, let's go to pool, they'll say, okay, you are going to have, right? How can you get your pool? So that means they're going to define the value X later. How can you access before? So automatically, this is not available here. Because when you create your own, now or later, you can only access that. Okay, so if I don't do it, if I don't define it, then then X is available to both of these, right? But when you define it, okay, so it means you are using your own X. If you are using your own X, you cannot borrow from global. Okay, you cannot borrow from global. But let's say you say, I want to borrow from global. I want to use global X. Then you have to specifically mention that I'm going to use global X. Okay. So what you do here, okay, you simply put, okay, here global X, and now you call X. So in a way you are saying that, okay, I want to use global value, right? Because by default, when you don't mention global, it is looking for in-house for that function specific value. But when you mention global X, now it knows, okay, until I create my own local, I have to use global X. And in this case, you'll be able to access. Okay, value of X is 5. Okay, I'll put this as 1 and 2 so that there is no confusion, right? So one value, right? So this is 5. So, okay. So if there's a global value, everybody can use it. If there's a local value, only local will be able to use it. You can't use global. But there is a way to use global until you declare. Now, after this, okay, if whatever X you use, I'll be using local only. In this case, I cannot refer to global. Only until you have your own value, you can use global, right? Only until you have your own value, you can use global. After that, you can't use global. Okay, so small, um, application of global and local variable here. Clear? Okay. Now we'll
Yes.
move to
So I have a one question or a doubt. Can we have this x defined in another function as well?
of course. So the
We can. Oh, it is
behavior
independent.
will be specific to that function.
Local.
Now,
Okay.
yes. Now, if I define a function outside, okay, so later we will see once we do the basic program, we'll see you can define a function inside a function. If I
Yeah.
define a function inside a function, the inside function will have access to this x. But if you define a totally new function, then there is no connection between this and the other function that you define. So,
Sounds good.
okay. So as a function, you can only access your own or global. You cannot access other functions variable. Okay. Okay. So now there are four types of function. When I say function, it is like how you declare the function based on the input parameter. We saw one example earlier, right? So what I'll do, I'll create another function here, def. I'll call it as my func2, let's say, or 2. And I'm going to use a comma b. And I will say print. Yeah. Sum of a and b equal to a comma a plus b, right? Comma a plus b. And I'll also print the value of a and b here. Print f a equal to a and b equal to b. Okay. So now you see I'm using two input parameters here. Now when I call my func2, okay, it's going to give me error. Okay, and error is required positional arguments, right? So these are called arguments, right? We have when you pass a value to function, they are called arguments, parameters or argument. Now what it says is not this. Required positional arguments. I want to copy this. Okay. So what is arguments we know, okay, the value that you pass. But what is required and what is positional? Now you see, I'm passing A and B. Both A and B are required, two required, correct? Required means you have to pass the value for A and B. Okay. You have to pass value for A and B. Okay. I can say 10, comma 20. So when you pass 10, comma 20, your program has worked fine. Okay. So I will say here something like this. My func2. Okay. So I'm saying my func2. Okay. So A is 20, A is 10, and B is 20. So required means you have to pass two values. You can't pass 1 or 3. Okay. You have to pass exactly 2. That's what required means. Positional means, okay, when I pass 10 and 20, it does left to right mapping or matching or mapping, whatever you call it. That means 10 will be mapped to A and this 20 will be mapped to B. If we had third variable, the third value would have been mapped to the third one, fourth to fourth. So it does left to right mapping. Okay. So in this case, it is 10, A will be 10 and B will be 20. Okay. This is what we mean by required and positional. Required is separate, positional is separate. Required means you have to pass two values, no, not more than two, not less than two. And it has to be in the same order. If I want A to be 20, then I have to pass 20 first. Okay. Not 10 because automatically it picks value the way we give it. Okay, great. Now, how can we make required as non-required? So we will see one example where how to make this as non-required and non-positional. Okay, we'll see. So I'm going to create another function called def, okay, func3. I'm going to call this as func3. Okay, so you have 3 here. Now, I want to make B as the default value. Okay, now see, I'm using A and B, right? Now, if you use A and B, then I have to give you 2 values. Otherwise, you don't know what's the value of A or B. So in some cases, you might have some default value. Let's say you are, you have office across multiple cities. Okay, your business has office across multiple cities, but let's say 80% of employees sit in one location. 20% are, let's say, in sales and they have offices all across the country or across the globe. But 80% employees sit at one place. They are maybe operations or development, and they don't need to be everywhere, right? They will be in one single. So when you are adding the location, okay, 80% of the time, okay, it's a default value, right? Only 20% of the time you need to change. So 80% is default. So why not make it default so that you don't even have to pass the value? So in my case, let's say if, B is 9.8 or 3. Let's say 14. If B is 3.14, maximum number of times, and very few times it will be something else. So in this case, okay, if I pass 10, 20, if I pass 10, 20 for my func3, then, okay, func3, right? See, B still takes 20. B still takes 20. So there's no difference between, okay, this one and this one, the first one and this one. But sometimes, okay, as I said, if you do not pass B, now, unlike the previous case where we got error, this time it will not give error, but take that default value of 3.14. B is taking default value of 3.14 when no value is passed to it. Okay, so we call this as, okay, so I'm going, this is required positional. This is called default arguments. Okay, there is a default value added. Now, in this case, A is required, B is default. Okay, A is required because we have not given default value to A. So A is default. You can use mix of these. So A is default, but B is, sorry, A is required, but B is default. B is not required. If you give it, it will take it. If you don't give it, it has its own value. All right. So in this case, B will be 3.14 if you don't pass in this case. But in this case, it will take 20 because you are giving the value 20. Okay. So this is how you can design your function with default values. Okay. One more thing you see. Okay. A is not default, B is default, correct? So I have to give value for A. Now, what if I want to make A as default, but B as required, for example? If I do like this, PyCharm is already giving error. But if I do like this, okay, then what it means, because see, it is still positional. Positional means left to right mapping, correct? So left to right mapping means if you give a value, okay, first value, it will be given to A, right? And second value will be given to B. So in order to give value to B, in order to give value to B, you have to give first value. You can't have second value without first value, isn't it? So in this case, there is no point of making A as default. There is no point of making A as default. Why? Because if you make default A, okay, you don't give value, but how can you give second value without giving the first value? That means in a way you are making it mandatory for you to give first value, isn't it? Now in this case, it will throw error. Okay. Non-default argument follows default argument. So always, okay, non-default argument, okay, so B is non-default argument, right? It says non-default argument follows default argument. Okay, this is not permitted. Logically also, if you see, not doesn't make sense, correct? So otherwise fine. Okay, default argument can follow non-default, right? So if I, the what we had earlier is like default value is following non-default, which is fine because of the positional thing, right? I cannot reach to second. Now, if I have to make A, you can have both values as default, right? I say A equal to 5. Now, in this case, it will work 5. It will work fine because in second case, A will take 10. So 10 plus 3.14 will be 13.4. And you can have function 3 without any values also. In this case, we are not providing values, so A takes 5 and B takes 3.14. So this is an example of function with default values. So opposite of required is default, and this is how you manage default. Now we will talk about how to make it non-positional. Okay, so I'm going to take, let's say, we'll take function 2 only. You can take any function, okay? Doesn't matter. Function 2 or 3, doesn't matter. And here I'm going to call this as function 4, function 4. Okay, function 4, function 4. And I'm going to call function 4 here, let's say. So I'm going to say my function 4. Okay, now I want to make it non-positional. That means I want, okay, so I say 22, comma 33. Now, when you run it, okay, in function 4, oh, this is function 4, sorry. In function 4, okay, A is taking, see, A is taking 22 and B is taking 33, right? Left to right mapping, positional. But I want to make it non-positional. So in this case, okay, the non-positional thing is referred as keyword. Keyword argument. Keyword arguments. Now, keyword argument says that provide keyword to this. So when I say function 4, I know that function 4 has A as first value and B as second, right? So if I want to give 22 to B, then I will say B equal to, I have to use same variable name. If it is X and Y, you have to use X and Y here. Now I'm saying B equal to 22, A equal to 33. I'm using same variable name. Okay. Now you see, okay, A is 33 and B is 22. It ignored the position. It is looking at the keyword. Okay. So remember, like when you're giving keyword, we have to use equal to while calling the function. And when you're doing default, we use equal to while defining the function. Okay. So you can get rid of positional by using the keyword argument. So when I say B equal to 22 and A equal to 33, so B became 22 and A became 33. In this case, it looked for the keyword, it looked for the name, not for the position. Okay, this is how you can declare non-positional or keyword argument. So we have seen required, default, keyword. These are the three main types. And we also have one more type of function called as variable length arguments. Okay, so far, whether it is positional or default or keyword, if there were two arguments, you can only pass two values maximum, right? Okay, minimum you can pass 0, right? Minimum you can pass less than that. Here I have passed 0 because I have made both as default. But I can't give 3, right? I can't give 10 if the variables that is there here in function definition are 2, then I can't give 3 here. So you can give 3 using what we call as variable length arguments. So this is what we're going to talk about. Variable length arguments. Okay. Now variable length arguments means that you can give more than one value to it. Okay. So you have to define a function which can take variable length argument. Okay. So for example, okay, let's create a function here. So I'm going to say def my func5, okay, a comma b, okay, colon print, I'll say a equal to a and b equal to b. Okay. My func5 ab, I'm not adding, I'm just trying to print it. Now, if I come here and I call my func5 and I give 10, 20, 30, okay, 40. What happened? Okay, exit code 1, error. Okay, you are passing more than what, okay, what you can be consumed. So only 2 position argument is required, but we gave 4. So if you want, okay, a variable to accept more than 1, okay, variable length, not more than 1, sorry. It is variable. Variable length means it can have 0 arguments also. Okay. Then you define here only at the place of defined, where this is where we define, right? You add star. Everywhere else not required. Now in this case, you see A, we have not given star. So A is required. So you have to give value for A. But for B, it is not required. You can choose not to give value for B, or you can give 1 value, or 2, or 3, or 4. It can take any number of values. So see, 10 goes to A because A is required. So first value goes to first argument, and B can say, okay, give me everything. I can take whatever you have. So 20, 30, 40 is added to B. So B can take more than 1 value. And we have seen tuple. Okay, so B is taking value as a tuple. You see that?
Sure, Sapnil. Sapnil, what if there is A plus B? Will that be any?
How can you do A
We
plus
cannot
B?
do.
A
We
is
cannot do
A.
that operation, right? In that.
Of course you can't. A is integer, B is tuple. How can you add integer to tuple? Now you can append. You can convert tuple as a list, then you do append, and then convert it back to tuple. But you can't add. Right?
Sure. By default, it takes as a tuple. Okay.
Yeah.
And what if
That's
there
more than
is?
1 value. So it has to take as either list or tuple, and it takes as tuple.
Okay, but if we still like write that as A plus B, it will come up with an error.
See, it doesn't matter, see, if the moment you ask it to perform certain task, right, you will look at the situation at that moment, right? Now, if I am doing A plus B at here, then you know that A is integer and B is tuple. You'll say, how can I add integer to tuple? Correct? So at that very moment, what is the form of the variables? And line number 31, A is integer and B is tuple. How can you add integer to tuple? You can't. It'll give you error.
That means star is mandatory, sir.
Why star is mandatory?
You,
Why do we write star?
I mean,
No, I'm just asking, why did I put star? What is the
that means
purpose of star?
We can take any values, right?
we can take
Not
in
any value,
3
all the
values.
value. B star B means it can consume any value. If I give only 10 here, I don't give others, or maybe I'll call it again. Now, second time when I call it, I'm not passing any value to B. Then B will be empty tuple. If I call this with two values, then B will be a tuple with one value. It has to be a collection so that it can store multiple values. So I'm indicating that it is a collection. You use star. So
Yes,
this
sir.
way you can
Makes
give
sense. Makes sense for me.
multiple values to B. Okay. Now you can even give what you call as keyword, multiple keywords also to your function. So I'm going to create def my function 6. Okay. And here I'll give star star C. I'm introducing one more variable called star star. And now I'm going to print C. Okay. Now when you're calling my func6, okay, so let's say you have 10, 20, and now you are saying name equal to such. And this is how you pass keyword, right? Variable name, comma, value. Okay. Variable name, comma, value. Okay. Variable name, comma, value. Now when you run it, oops, did I not?
You can,
My, oh, I did not change it, right?
right.
Okay. So A became 10 because A is mandatory. So A became 10. B is tuple, which takes tuple values. So it took 20. And okay. Oh, okay. When I copied, I forgot to change it to C, right? So now C equal to C. Now see what it has done. It has taken double star will take all the keyword arguments and it will convert into dictionary. So it has taken keyword arguments and okay, it has converted to dictionary. So when you're providing dictionary or tuple values, star B or star star C, okay, it can take any number of values. Single star will look for individual values. Okay, double star will look for your key colon
Dictionary.
value, which is your okay the keyword arguments, and need not be number. Okay, I can give text also. Single value will go where? To the tuple, right? And equal to when you give, it goes as a dictionary. Now, inside the function, you can perform dictionary operations or tuple operations, okay? And then return the value. So these are the 4 forms of functions. Okay, function can take required arguments, can take default arguments, you can pass keyword argument, or you can even pass variable number of arguments to a function. Now, depending upon your problem, you will decide which version of this to use. So there are 4 types in terms of input parameter, and there is only one type, part of a return. So either you return or you don't return, that's it. But arguments can be of, function can have 4 different types of input arguments. Okay. So now what I'll do is we'll stop here for today. I'm going to give you the second assignment. Okay. Second assignment will be again problem statement, which you'll have to convert into functions. So perform functions and you can choose any one of these. Okay. And tomorrow when we meet, we will talk about recursive functions. And then we have a couple of properties. Okay. We'll talk about modules, help. So we will do that. For today, you have to practice. I'll upload some functions practice problems. So use that.